Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things homestaying, homemaking, and just our journey to a slower, more simple life. In today's video, I'm actually going to show you a few recipes using pumpkin. Now, when we think of pumpkin, we usually think of the autumn season, and maybe that will be when you're watching this. I love pumpkin in the autumn too. It's definitely when I have pumpkin the most. But for those of us that eat more seasonally, oftentimes winter is a lot of squash in general, not just in autumn. So I have some pumpkin puree that I have to use up. If you saw the last video, you would know that my freezer had stopped working and I had to save all kinds of meat. But other than just meat, I had my pumpkin puree in the freezer, so that is why I have to kind of rush make a bunch of pumpkin food so that I don't have to throw that away. In this video, I show you 4 recipes that are super delicious, some sweet, some savory, and I hope you will try them for yourself and let me know what you think of them. So with that, let's hop right into the recipes. First off, we're going to make a creamy pumpkin sauce, kind of like an Alfredo sauce, but with pumpkin. And we're going to start by putting about a tablespoon of butter on the stovetop to melt with a tablespoon of flour. Then we're going to add some garlic. I just used this kind of garlic. You can use fresh garlic or garlic powder. Mix that in as well. Then we're going to want to do 2 cups of milk. All of this we're just going to get nice and warm on the stovetop by mixing and incorporating it all together. Then when the time is right, we will add a cup of our pumpkin puree and just get that mixed in, distributed really well so there's no chunks or clumps, just really creamy and smooth. Once that happens, we're then going to add about 3 ounces of a cream cheese and let that melt in nicely. For spices, we're going to do some sage, about a tablespoon of sage, about a half teaspoon of salt, pinch of pepper, and a even tinier little pinch of cinnamon and nutmeg. You can also add a little cayenne pepper as well if you want just a little bit of heat. And that's really all there is to that recipe. If it's not seeming to thicken up for you, you can always add more flour, but it should thicken up really nice. And we're going to serve it with Parmesan. By the way, this is my new grater and I love it so much. It helps me so much. You won't even believe. Makes it so much easier to get cheese. And this is what that dish looks like. It is so good. It's not weird. You might think pasta with pumpkin would be kind of weird, but it's just delicious and creamy and definitely something I want to make again very soon. Next up is my own recipe creation that you can actually find on my blog, and that is for pumpkin bread. First, we're going to start by just melting 3 tablespoons of cream cheese with a 1/4 cup of butter, just to get that all melted and mixed together nicely. At this time, you can also turn your oven on to 375 to preheat. In a mixing bowl, we're going to put our pumpkin, which is about 2 cups. If you're using canned puree, 2 8-ounce containers is fine. It will work just fine. A 1/2 cup of brown sugar, a 1/2 tablespoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon vanilla extract, and a 1/2 teaspoon of both baking powder and baking soda, and lastly a pinch of salt. We're going to make sure that's mixed together super well. And then add our egg to mix in, and then the rest of our wet ingredients. And then you're going to want to add a cup of flour as well. Once that's all mixed super well, we can then add our chocolate chips, which I usually use normal chocolate chips, but I only had white and that worked really well as well. Once it's all mixed together nicely, we can get our bread baking pan nice and greased. I just like to use butter, and then pour it in. We're going to want to bake this for about an hour, and then I typically have to turn down the oven a little bit to 350 or 325 and let it bake for an additional 10 to 15 minutes. And there's your pumpkin bread all done. Next, I wanted to show you how easy it really is to make a pumpkin spice latte. I know it's a super popular drink, especially during the autumn season, and for some even into the winter. First, prepare your coffee however you prepare it. I am so blessed with my new fancy espresso machine that I love so much, but if you just make regular pour over coffee, that is absolutely fine. Just make your coffee however you like. So we're going to put some maple syrup, that's completely up to your sweetness preference, some cinnamon, a little bit of ginger, and a little bit of nutmeg, because those are the spices I like to use for pumpkin spice. We're then going to add about 3 tablespoons of our pumpkin puree and give that a really good mix. We're then going to add our milk, however much you usually like to have. And just for fun, I'm doing whipped cream with some cinnamon sprinkle on top. And that is a from home pumpkin spice latte. So cool. Our final recipe is going to be a pumpkin soup. So I just start with putting oil in the bottom of a pan. I use avocado and a diced yellow onion, as well as some garlic, and we're just going to want to caramelize those onions on the bottom of the pan for a few minutes. Then I added a can of chicken broth, so just a container of chicken broth is fine, and then I added 2 cups of the pumpkin puree and just mix that all together. For spices, we're going to want to do about a half teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a half teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of nutmeg, a pinch of clove, and a pinch of cayenne pepper if you'd like, and of course just a little bit of black pepper as well. Then I add about a half cup of heavy cream, and I also added 2 tablespoons of maple syrup just to add a slight bit of sweetness. I then go in with my immersion blender just to make sure there's no clumpiness. And it is that simple to make a quick pumpkin soup recipe. I hope you enjoyed making all those pumpkin recipes with me. If you try it out, please let me know and let me know how you like it. If you enjoy videos like this and would like to see more, please consider subscribing so that you can join this community of like-minded folk. And I do hope to see you next time. Bye-bye!